goes out. So thank you all for coming once again, and I'm going to hand it over to Greg.
Hey, good evening. Thanks for coming. I'll give a brief introduction of who I am, and then I'll let the panelists introduce themselves from left back to right, and we'll have Misty introduce herself last. So I'm Greg Eason. I'm a second-year MBA real estate student here from Atlanta, Georgia. I went to the Naval Academy, served on cruisers and destroyers in Norfolk, Virginia. While I was in Norfolk, I always loved real estate, so I started buying property in like 2016, which everything worked. Debt was accretive, which just means if you put debt on a property, you kind of raise your cash-on-cash return, so that was great. But I wanted to figure out how can I get into commercial real estate, so I did a program called SkillBridge, worked for an affordable housing developer, doing that internship, and then I started working for a market rate developer in Atlanta called Southeast Capital as a development manager. And after a year there, I went to business school here. UNC's real estate program is excellent, and so I was just fortunate enough to be able to come here. Did a summer internship with a company called Grosvenor in DC last summer, and I'll be going to Jamestown in the fall to work. So that's a little bit on me. And so we'll start with Emma.
We don't have a lot of time. The questions are great. So I graduated from this institution in 1983. Yes, I am that old. And I went to Boston and cut my teeth, and I have been in business as the Littlejohn Group, and then unfortunately after the divorce, Emma and Co. And I'm a housing maven, guru, and I work all over the country and outside the country. I can't wait to talk.
Great. My name is John Barker, and I'm with Liberty Investment Partners in Raleigh, and I'm excited to be here today. I thought my job was really cool until I heard Greg start to describe what he was doing.
Yes.
Sounds like a lot of fun. But we do two things. We invest in shopping centers, and we develop and acquire apartments. A small team of 3 of us are based in Raleigh. 2 of us in Raleigh, and then 1 guy in Winston-Salem. And Will Petrus was an intern with us this summer, so glad to see that he invited me to Chapel Hill. Maybe that means that the internship, that he enjoyed it, and he still wants to associate with me. So yeah, he was great. We think a lot of UNC, so excited to be here tonight to talk about real estate.
Awesome. Scott Wilson, I'm from Charlotte, and I graduated here in 2002 undergrad with the econ degree. And I've had the same job for 22 years up until March of this year. I work for a large developer, big southeastern full-service firm called Childress Klein. It was split headquarters, Charlotte and Atlanta, and navigated through a lot of different roles there, sort of high-rise property management, office leasing, brokerage, and then at the tail end of it, acquisition and development. So I got a sort of flavor of a lot of different roles within the same organization. Very entrepreneur-driven company, even though we were very large, very flat hierarchy and decision-making process, which sort of led me at the end of last year to make a career move and jump out and start my own firm. So in March of this year, we created a firm called Mandolin Partners, really focused on brokerage advisory work for fee business with some relationships we had previously, and then also similar to what John is doing, have an investment platform focused on acquisition and development in the Carolinas. Glad to be here, and I look forward to questions.
And Misty. Misty, you're on mute.
That would help. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I'm Misty McCall, and I graduated from UNC with a BA in economics in 1990. And I have sort of been in real estate all of my life. My dad sort of did real estate, and I was an entrepreneur in my sort of 20s and 30s and sold that business and went back to CCIM school and have been working on a 1,000-acre project for 10 years in politics. So we have just been de-annexed at the state level, and we will be working to have the development come to life. So it's exciting, and I look forward to tonight.
That's awesome, Misty. She answered one of my questions that I had. All right. So I have a set of like generic questions, but I'll start with some questions that kind of are more particular to each of you all's work experience, and it'll speak to some of the entrepreneurial skills that y'all have. So Emma, one of the projects that you worked on is Glen Lennox, which do we have any people that stay or that have visited Glen Lennox in here? The shopping center? Yeah, so that's a 440 unit apartment community with 2-story commercial, 21,000 square foot of retail and 5,000 feet of office space. Grubb Properties was the developer. But to find that unique mix of uses, they asked Emma to kind of do the research and figure all of that stuff out, because once you develop real estate, you just can't kind of go back. So you kind of want to make sure what you're developing is useful. So could you talk about how did you go about that and what led to some of the outcomes? And maybe even how did you get the business to begin with? Yeah.
Right, so I have 4 or 5 people that have always worked for me. I always have an intern, and I have a little helper here tonight. Our work is everything from concept to closing. And I tell people hire us to understand what to build, when to build, and who to build it, and sometimes the capital component as well. So I worked with Grubb on a number of properties, worked on a Children's Clan project, the Radcliffe condos. So this Glen Lennox came along when they were starting their funds and things. And so I think the salient point is the research is granular. Our work is getting in the field and understanding exactly what's going on and interviewing, and I've been in business for so long that continuum of research and consumer information, there's so much more available, third-party information now, so that you don't have, but it still needs to be grounded in core research. So that particular project, I knew Chapel Hill Raleigh housing dynamics, and we spent a lot of time in the field, understanding, talking to brokers, seeing properties, talking to construction firms. So it was really, the standard point is getting down to the granular. You can get data from RCLCO, you can find data here, you can find all kinds of things, but it's a local business, you have to understand it. And Chapel Hill is very unique, so understanding what the demand was for product in the mix, and being able to defend that with White Oak, their success with some townhouse, the affordable housing, attainable housing. Chapel Hill's been a bear with that for years, understanding what our targets needed to be and who that consumer was and how we could deliver that from a phasing standpoint. And then, of course, on the multifamily side, understanding the growth in that market and where the product was going, because that's the key is for us, is we're the people that are supposed to project forward as opposed to looking backwards. And that's been the cornerstone of my advisory services and development services over the years. So more on that, if anybody has questions later. How's that?
Oh, that's awesome. And development, we're all in it because we love real estate. And I always say, like, I need to buy diapers. But for you, the advisory work comes at the beginning, but the development comes, some years later.
Yes.
How do you kind of structure your compensation with your potential partners to ensure that, you can be adequately compensated for the development that'll come, but, at that part in the process, they're spending dollars that they're just putting at risk. So how do you kind of adequately serve your clients in a way that's fair to your expertise?
That's great. It took a while as an entrepreneur to figure that piece out. It's one thing to charge an hourly rate, but basically I've refined my program to be, I charge a day rate to fly, go look at a problem, or an opportunity for someone and come with data. And on this particular project, this was strictly a capital raise and then a planning initiative. And I had recurring business with Grubb, so it wasn't one where I looked for deferred compensation. So it was just a flat fee. I think Jamestown. I forget who was involved with the financing that one. So that was just a fee. And then a lot of times what I do is, because sometimes I marry the developer and the builders and put the whole team together of who's building the residential components. So say it's Zom and David Weekley and, the Housing Authority. I'll put in a lower retainer for 24 months so that I can have a compensation at success moment, which would be, initial pre-development funding. So if you're horizontal, then add, when you sell a pad, whatever. But the fundamental things in entrepreneur is knowing who your client is, because there's no sense in trying to do something if you don't get along and you can't trust them. And I've not fired enough clients in my life, but because it changes, but during the different downturns, that deferred compensation. So what I do is I have that retainer because my information is perishable. And so in other words, it's great to come up with a great concept and then have them run with it. So I put a success fee. So there have been times when I will put a rooftop bonus, which is when I worked with Trammell Crow and other residential developers. So I worked with Crow in Boston and then in Charlotte before I went on my own. And I would put a rooftop bonus or a leasing bonus. So all of a sudden I'm off retainer and 3 years later I'm getting checks in the mail. Like on a condo project, sometimes I'll do a fixed fee. So, I've made a few $100,000 off of projects when I least expected it, but they finally closed. Not on time, but the money still came in, Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
That's awesome. And John Barker, once again, thanks for hiring, Will, internship.
Only the best, yes.
Thank you very much.
We've got an internship this coming summer, so yeah, there's that.
And now this,
Y'all better look at.
so we have some first year real estate concentrators in here, so you're gonna get barrage of emails and calls
Right
after
on.
this.
Great.
Can you do a review real quick?
Excellent, yes, very good.
And so, as a Southeast focused firm, and it seems like you focus on wherever the opportunity is. And a lot of people are kind of raising capital or have raised capital with the Southeast focused investment thesis. When you're going out to potential people to invest with you, what's the way that you sell your differentiation to potential equity partners?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think in real estate, to differentiate yourself, you need to specialize, and I think there's really two ways that you can do that. You can specialize geographically, or you can specialize within product type. So there's some folks, Gordon Grubb was mentioned earlier, he comes to mind. He, in my mind, has specialized geographically in Raleigh. He has just developed projects, and I think the joke in his office for a while was that he wouldn't develop anything further than 10 minutes from his house. So like he wanted to develop stuff in a very specific area, and he could do lots of different product types. For us, we have specialized in product type, not geography. So for us, as we've gotten started, we've done two different things, so retail and multifamily, just because it gave us some diversification and cash flow and resume as we got started. I think at some point it makes sense for us to just focus on one thing, but if you think about some of the most successful real estate companies, they typically specialize in one product type. So for us, retail and multifamily, and if you drilled on that even more, I could quiz Will on kind of what our investment criteria is, but so within retail, it's very specific. So it's unanchored, multi-tenant retail, close to good demographics in the Southeast. We want to be more than 6 or 8 tenants, probably less than 30. We want staggered lease expiration dates. We want annual escalations on all leases. We don't want a building depth more than 80 feet. We want 3 points of ingress egress. So like you can see that funnel starts to get really small. And so that's how we differentiate ourselves, is we find a niche. And our retail thesis was contrarian about 6 years ago around e-commerce. A lot of folks said that bricks and mortar retail is going to die because everybody's going to shop on their phone, shop on Amazon. But as we all know, like if you have good, well-located retail with service-based tenants, it's done well. It's done really well. COVID actually exacerbated that trend. So for us, we had this investment thesis and we've focused on that one product type. And so that's how we've been able to differentiate ourselves with our investors and with other stakeholders in the market, like brokers and other people that would be able to be a deal, source for us, they need to know when they come across that deal, hey, I should call Liberty Investment Partners and John Barker because this is the type of deal he's looking for. I mean, at the end of the day, like, we're entrepreneurial, like we want to find good real estate opportunities. So like if you brought me something that's outside the box, we would do it. But if you talk to a broker and said like, hey, bring me a good deal, they're gonna be like, what does that mean? So you gotta describe specifically what you're looking for to kind of differentiate yourself from other people in the market.
That is awesome. And Scott Wilson, your transition from working at a major firm is one that's, probably not the easiest to do. 20 years is probably extremely comfortable, and you're at a point where you have business and it's doing good. What would make you take that leap of faith to kind of open your own shop, and how did you transition kind of like those permanent paychecks that come on time to going into an entrepreneurial space where that may not be guaranteed?
Great question. So, for those of you who don't know, Children's Climb was probably one of the largest developers in the Southeast, privately held. Really, we're a spin out of the Trammell Crow Company, which I know Emma mentioned. And if you haven't read the book, Trammell Crow Master Builder is a great book, really on the spirit of entrepreneurship. And it was a Dallas developer that created a very large national partnership network, very entrepreneurial driven, very promoting young talent to positions to make big decisions, and without a playbook really, and became one of the prominent preeminent developers in the country. So I'd advise you, there's a very entrepreneurial spirit throughout that book. And Childress Klein was born out of Trammell Crow. So Fred Klein and Don Childress were, Don was one of the top 3 partners at the time, and Fred worked for Don, and they spun out in 1988, having been 2 of the top partners. And really, for various reasons, some was disruption in the marketplace, some was Trammell Crow at the time was having some challenges keeping up that partnership network due to the market and others. But there was a lot of groups in 1988 that took that entrepreneurial spirit, the experience, relationships, and created these new firms, and some of which Stream Realty is a big one, based out of Dallas, DTZ, Childress Klein, and others. So that was like the first example where our core values at Childress Klein were really the similar core values to Trammell Crow at the time, and really I think his top 5 virtues were partnership, entrepreneur, persistence, grit, and determination were the 5 big pillars there. So Childress Klein really was born out of that. In our organization, we got up to 300 people, to your point, on large company, and had big resources behind us. But as Emma can attest, there's only 12 partners that ran a 300-person organization. We developed over 52 million square feet of sort of high-rise towers, big industrial, big mixed-use, multifamily towers. So point being, it was a small entrepreneurial, privately held company with sort of high-end partners that ran it, but we were very flat. So each time in the downturn, the Great Recession, we had 3 big business lines that were born out of that. And really, it was one person that raised their hand and said, hey, I have an idea. I see disruption in the market. I see opportunity. Here's a business plan. And the partners would say, we believe in you, go do it. And it was that simple. There was no board, there was no panel and all that. So one of those businesses, the brokerage advisory business I created in 2010, as an example of being entrepreneurial, coming up with a business plan, and having sort of big companies support behind a small boutique brokerage operation. So fast forward to really last year in 2023, and had navigated through that and became a division partner in the company, which is really the pinnacle of where you can be. And after 23 years, had navigated through a lot of different roles and had created a successful brokerage arm, and knew I had a client base there that would potentially follow me. And a partner of mine, who we're now 50-50 partners with, was also going through a similar opportunity and transition in his space. And he had a lot, he was a Chapel Hill MBA, had a lot of complementary skill sets that deep finance mind and others. And we just at the time felt, hey, we've learned a lot. We've seen it done from Trammell Crow to Childress Klein. We think we have the relationships, the partnerships, the brand, the experience to really jump out and do it. And to your point, it was a very challenging and very introspective decision, and a lot of questioning yourself and imposter syndrome and other things like that. But if you really believe in yourself and really, with the experience that you have, and most importantly, the partnerships and relationships, and our business, as you all can attest to, is based on relationships. Real estate's a relationship business, and for that reason, felt comfortable that there was a backstop for me and an opportunity, a good story to really jump out and do it. And it is scary. I mean, there's no 2 young kids and a mortgage and a way of life that was very comfortable with in the previous role to no paycheck. And when will it come? And we're in the capital markets world right now, and the investment side is very challenging as well. So, we've just learned to be patient, knowing that it'll come, and believe in ourselves, our playbook, our story. And, we were talking about before, hopefully 2025 becomes that year where things open up and there's some energy and some confidence in the marketplace. But, I think it's really believing in yourself, having the right relationships, right partnerships, and, friends and partners that support you through the way. But it's fun. My wife doesn't recognize who I am today because I'm so happy, so confident, and having so much fun despite some of the challenges in the markets.
Yeah. I would just jump in because I think when you talk about family, that's important. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, we have a significant other spouse here tonight supporting. I couldn't have done it without, family and friends and the opportunities, because you work 7 days a week, 24/7. But if you love it, you're crazy, none of that matters. And I just want to add that. I'm sure you would act because he has a solid backdrop. The time with the kids, you can work your own schedule. So from an entrepreneur standpoint, my kids got to see a lot of, tour a lot of things. I've got 2 in real estate, and because they spent time with me in the field as well as in my office during home.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Doing what you love sticks out. And so, Misty, this question is for you. I did some research on the Summerfield Farms area. Summerfield Farms is north of Greensboro, and it's a lot of land, and they're doing some really interesting things. I would love for you to talk about that. One of my questions was, like, is the project going to move forward? I saw that the town kind of said no twice, but of course, in North Carolina, you can kind of get approval from the state and kind of push for it. So seeing that you just got that approval, could you talk about that process? And was it some of the not in my backyard that you dealt with? And how did y'all work through that in Summerfield Farms?
Great question. And we started, I guess, my business partner, who is the large equity partner, started in 1996 purchasing property and acquired up to almost 1,000 acres. And so his name is David Couch, and he's been very into the multifamily and the retail segment. This is sort of a legacy project for him, but we've worked on it for the last 10 years strictly in political. We've done a lot of analysis. We've used a company called Zimmerman Volk, which I think does similar work to the woman that was just talking. And so as we have gone down the path, it's like, what do we need? How is this going to work? How can we create a project that will, facilitate all the things that we feel like that the housing shortage needs, creating an environment where you can be outdoors, creating an environment where families and people of all ages can live and be integrated, so that it's small houses to large houses and they're sort of incorporated together. We're using a company called Dover Cole out of Miami to help us with the civic design part of it. But we've definitely hit significant hurdles. The folks in the place where we live in Summerfield, it's a very rural place, and they like their rural environment and they don't trust. We've received a lot of local resistance. And it's been more than sort of 2 turn downs. It's been, we've done all kinds of community engagement. We've worked at every level with, the town council, with the mayor, with everyone. And it just, we kind of got to a standstill where we couldn't take it any further. And we explored options of how we could make this project come to fruition. And one of the options was to go to the state legislature and explain what we've been through for the last 10 years. And we worked 2 years sort of exploring that option. And finally, in June of this past year, they removed 1,000 acres from the town of Summerfield and put it in Guilford County. So now at this juncture, we are working with the Guilford County folks to have similar zoning assessed to all of those different parcels. It's a large amount of parcels that sort of are adjacent and connected. And we're still in the process of doing that. And then we'll have to find water and sewer, which could come from Rockingham, it could come from Forsyth, it could come from Greensboro. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like right now, but there could be a public-private partnership. We could annex into one of those municipalities, but we're hopeful, and we've done a lot of research on the side of understanding how, you know, the human really does like to be on foot, and, you know, to be in a place where it feels human scale, where you have sidewalks and tree-lined streets, and where you're able to walk to a place, a third place, like a coffee shop, or to a market and buy a few things, bicycle and see your neighbors. So our goal is to not only have you out in nature and have that rural feel, but also you're near modern conveniences like downtown Greensboro. You're near the PTI airport. You're, you know, steps away from getting on I-73 to go to Rockingham or to go to Winston-Salem. So that's sort of where we feel like it's vital. And our vision, and just like everyone else has said, you have to have passion for what you do. And it is a 7-day, 24/7 kind of job. And as executive director and sort of looking at all, I get to sort of touch a little bit of everything and be a part of the process. And I've learned a lot. You know, it's had frustrations, but it's also had a lot of beautiful moments where you don't give up, and you're just patient, and you really just keep going and knowing that your vision is where you want to go and what you want to do. And I just think for everybody that wants to get into this business, being patient is part of the process, yet at the same time being very critical in your thinking, hiring the right partners, and managing expectations with those partners to make sure that you're, you know, going towards the goal line. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, that's extremely helpful. And are you a part of the ownership group in Summerfield
am.
Farms? Okay,
I'm a
And-
small part of the ownership group.
that's awesome. And so you have been working on that for the past 10 years as well, or have you come on recently?
I came on in 2016. So, but I've been here ever since, and, you know, all the political, I guess I get to be the librarian. I get to coordinate with all the vendors that we use. I get to, you know, create and work on the civic design piece, get to work with the Zimmerman Volk people about, you know, what we need and those 11 cluster villages and what they might look like and how they might be designed. But the concept is Summerfield is in general, you know, like McMansions with 3-acre lots. And as we're getting older and land is becoming more precious, it's incumbent on us as real estate people to be sustainable in what we do and have shared resources so that we don't eat up all that land and not have a place for people to get outside. You know, if you have 100 3-acre lots, you've taken up 300 acres, and you could actually use that acreage in a very wise way and have a lot of resources for people to go and do different things and to be able to create, to be able to get out in nature, to be able to have businesses, to be able to live in a small house to a large house, and to have neighbors, like maybe elderly people can watch their neighbors with young children ride their tricycles, and it creates a liveliness and a vibrancy to our communities to have all ages in the bell curve.
Okay, and then last question, I know I've kind of asked 2 in a row. What's your target market in north of Greensboro? Do you feel like it's, like you mentioned, retirees, or is it kind of like some of the university systems in Greensboro that you feel like you can piggyback off of? Who do you feel like your target audience is for Summerfield Farms?
So currently, the people that live in Summerfield, you probably have to, you know, be in the 38-year-old range up to 65. And there's this bell curve that young people can't live there because they can't afford it, and older people can't take care of a 3-acre lot. So you have this sort of top of the bell curve, and we want to increase that so that, you know, children can move back and live in the community where they grew up. And they can start in a small house and maybe, you know, acquire bigger houses. They become more successful or just stay in the house that they're in, but also that elderly people can stay in the neighborhood, go to the churches, go to the places that they are used to going to for the rest of their lives versus having to move out. So we might have retirement communities, we might have step up things, and we're having discussions with multiple people about those kinds of opportunities as well, so that we can offer soup to nuts pretty much. You can move there out of college, maybe live in a multifamily apartment if you needed to. And, as you age, you might want to move into a multifamily apartment, or you might want to have a flat somewhere. You might want to, have a small dwelling. So we want to see all different kinds of housing and have that so that everyone's invited to be in an inclusive community.
Okay, that's awesome. So I have a question that anybody on the panel could ask, and it's a generic question. And then after that, feel free to raise your hand and just kind of hop in with questions if you all have any. This is a generic question. Anybody that wants to answer can. Have technological advancements like AI, data analytics, or prop tech transformed the way you approach real estate development or management? What do you see as the next big disruptor for your industry?
I'll just jump in on housing. I think it's so fabulous to be able to connect people in the communities, like you were talking about, through platforms that are there, and I love how property management companies are adapting and communicating. I think that's going to allow us to get more data, which I always believe the consumer's ahead of the world if you listen to them. So to me, that's the exciting thing, is that acceleration and exchange of data. AI is great, but we got a long way to go before I think it really affects housing. I don't know. And I think that is the last question about where technology is going to go. What was that?
Yeah, so
What's going to impact us?
yeah.
Yeah. I think transportation mobility is absolutely it. I'm so excited. If you don't get it, McKinsey does a letter on mobility. It gives me goosebumps because we want to get around, and there are all kinds of ways to get around. And I'm just working on a project right now in Gaston County, and I'm really hopeful. I think the city is excited about helping us get different alternative transportation. They're doing free bus rides now, and with this huge industrial development, and we got to get people to the work because and so I think we're gonna have just a variety of opportunities as we go, and I think it's going to be local transportation. I think it's going to help people. We made headroad, but we got to really make that an easier, accessible thing for people. So I'm excited about it.
I'll add in too, I think y'all would agree, real estate's probably the slowest industry to ever adapt to technology. It's always been that way. And there's a lot of reasons why, I think, and you could argue a lot of different ways, but it is so relationship based, and everything is from a human capital perspective gets done. There's a lot of partnerships, a lot of groups that come in. Certainly data analytics is key for running assumptions and understand the market and trends. And we do have big data resources that we use to do that, and probably more data than they've ever been. But really being on the ground, getting the real data from people who are in the business, who are conducting the transactions, it tends to be the best way to move forward. I do think AI, there's a place for it, and then we're seeing it some. I'd be curious to see if y'all have worked on it, but we've messed around with some lease abstracting software through ChatGPT AI, where you can run a lease through if it's a similar form lease or so, and it can do a pretty good job of extrapolating information. It's probably 60–80% accurate, but you can go through, it gives you a base to go through. If you're going through a lot of leases, it sort of gets you to a position where you can get through them a little quicker. You have to be careful with the accuracy and all that. But I think some of that document review capabilities will help. But and then we're seeing some, I know in the property world, a lot of prop tech stuff from a property management perspective that seems to be, from efficiencies, productivity, consumer feedback in the buildings, etc.
Yeah, I would echo a lot of that, and just to focus on kind of apartments, we're building 255 units in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Right now, when we design those units, we had to take into consideration a lot of the technology that tenants want today. So one of those, y'all may all live in apartments and experience some of these, but kind of smart home technology. So like the ability to control a lot from your phone. So control your thermostat, control your lights. A lot of technology right now in multifamily around door locks. During COVID, that became a really big thing where you could do self-guided tours. So you can do a lot of that from your phone. So the ability to we've got to integrate that technology into the units because tenants want it, they desire it. Another thing that we have really started using a lot of is digital signatures, and y'all may kind of laugh at that because we're talking about how real estate can be archaic in a lot of ways and slowly adapt. It was not that long ago, and I wasn't in the business when it was this way, but it was snail mail, and then it turned into fax, and then it turned into email, and you emailed something, you printed it, you scanned it, and you sent it back, but now you've got DocuSign. And you'll maybe think, well, what was it like for DocuSign? Because y'all always had it, but that hasn't always been the case. So that kind of technology has really transformed what we do. You think about signing leases and getting investors to sign operating agreements and subscription agreements and signing CAs. It just has transformed the industry. Another one, have y'all heard of Matterport? Does anybody know anything about Matterport? So 3D tours. So you can go in and you can tour an apartment from your computer. You could go in and tour a commercial space from your computer. So I think at some point you'll want to go in and tour the property, but maybe you've got a spouse or you've got a business partner that wants to see the space. You can send it to them. They don't necessarily have to go see the property again. They can just tour it online. It's like, well, if you liked it, let's lease it. So it's expediting kind of that process. Another one, ChatGPT, that was mentioned earlier. Got to be careful with ChatGPT because it's not 100% accurate, but it is a great tool that you can use for research or ideas or maybe generating like an initial draft of an email or a lease. Those are a couple things that we've seen day to day in what we do.
And I would add that property management is, I'm sorry, you go ahead. Go ahead.
I was jokingly going to say, I can't wait for the automated dog walkers in these buildings so we can eliminate some of the carpet stains and problems that we have. That's the next big thing. George Jetson's facilities need to come back.
Great. I do quite a bit of property management too, and I have seen a shift over the years from, the paper to, sort of filling out and mapping into leases and DocuSign, and it does make the process much easier, but there still is a human component to it, as all of you have alluded to, and I think it's really important for us as we move forward to take those AI opportunities, understand how they are incorporated into the process. And perhaps it's a great field for some of you that are sort of getting into it and understand all the AI components and how it could, be taken to a level of less human interaction, which is a cost savings to everyone.
That's awesome. Pause, any questions?
Thanks all for being here. My name's Haley. I think, one of the big benefits of being at a large company is the salaries Greg mentioned for your diapers. But I also feel like one of the biggest benefits are the resources, things like access to counsel and marketing, even the insurance policy. Can you talk about how, or strategies that each of you had around building those for your companies individually without the larger national brand and access to those resources?
Great question. That's certainly, especially launching, something that you quickly realize that you could have taken for granted, and there's a lot of examples of that. I think back to relationships, really our business is creating a team that you trust and that experts that you might not have, even at the bigger company, they're relying on experts in a lot of different ways to get that feedback. A lot of when we launched out, a lot of that stuff dropped immediately and it came down to us. However, most of the team that we now rely on, both from an insurance perspective, security, in terms of cybersecurity and our technology stuff, are all the same team members that we had that helped support the previous company in some capacity. Just because worked with them over the years, there's trust that was created there. And literally, when you're putting together the plan and thinking about doing that, we went to every one of them just saying, what do we need to do? What do we need to think about? How we need to protect ourselves? And they're more than happy to sort of help support, be there for you, and be that trusted partner when we did jump out. So it's just creating a different team. Maybe the resources were there. It's easier to tap into. A lot of times they aren't relevant on that bigger scale. When you jump out, it's much more technical, much more different type issues that you have to be innovative and creative to do. So I think it's a great question. Having the big resource behind you there's comfort there. It's easy. But I think when you create that team and you really have to think through it, and it creates more of a unique and crafted to your business, or at least that's what we found. But having that team is so important.
Yeah, I'll just jump in. Since I started my business with a hope and a prayer after my second child, Patrick, who was here at the school, he's now at Starwood. Just, I don't know how to say that, but it's fun to know that he's precipitated there, he influenced that. You learn a lot the way you go. You can't know everything that's coming. I'll say that the biggest thing I learned about was bookkeeping, and today I'm so happy with all the software because I hated that. You want to do what you love, and that was that. Have that nailed now, thankfully, to QuickBooks, but we didn't have that. That was a pain in the butt. Insurance, it's always been changing. You just figure it out and you do the best you can. My clients for like Newland Communities and some of the bigger people kind of want you to sign contracts and have some certain types of insurance, but if you figure it out, right, and you can do policy. And I think the other vendors you figure them out. So many people that are entrepreneurs in other businesses. So so I've had up to 8 people working for me, and now I have 3 or 4 people that are 1099 remote, and then some sub consultants. I rely upon them a lot, and I just price into my projects their fees and write that up. So I hope that's helpful, just from a real grassroots.
I'll add one more just on top of that. When you announce you're going out, especially from a big company to a small company, and you make the announcement, it's amazing how many people come to support you. And it's people that have done it from before who know what it feels like, and literally calling you saying, please, like, if you need any help, here's what we did wrong day one on insurance, and we completely messed up, call this guy. And there's a cool collaborative team in a way that when they hear you're jumping out, they're there to support you. It's just friends, it's family, it's people that want to help because they've been through it.
Yeah.
They failed, and trust me, we've already failed a lot since March 1st, but you learn from each one of those mistakes. But it really is cool how quickly people jump out and just want to help you.
And I would also say, go ahead. I would also say from an entrepreneurial standpoint versus getting a job with, specific benefits, they're just completely different animals. And, in the entrepreneurial world, we rely a lot on friends, consultants, people that we pay for those services to bring into our arena, because we can't afford, like a big company, to pay everybody $250 or $300, $500,000. And so it's a bit of a different animal. And so you have to utilize your resources in the best way possible and call forth those resources as you need them. And as far as insurance and all of the different amenities that you get with a big company, I think it probably is a great idea going out from the start to get those resources, learn from those people, understand. And if you have an entrepreneurial spirit, when you do jump off, as he said, people really will come to your help, and they'll say, how can I help you? And utilize those resources, even LinkedIn and some of those resources where you develop relationships along the way. Keep those personal relationships going as you go down that pathway, and be sure to, not burn bridges, and be cognizant of how you might work together with that person in a different relationship in the future.
I think that's just so great, and that is part of the marketing. 99% of my business is referral business, and I have the best database. I've kept every contact I've had since Boston in real estate, and I keep it updated. It's a pain in the butt, and sometimes I come back from a ULI conference and there's a basket of cards there, So that's just to me the core, because they'll either come out or you can call and ask for something, and that's advice. You'll have so many more resources. I mean, LinkedIn's great, but you need to go deeper than that and really, and that's marketing. It's, I think you all might agree. It's reputation, marketing, really go hand in hand.
And Charlie.
And like you said, attending conventions and being present and making personal relationships is that's how you create the depth. And, you can't just do that on LinkedIn. You have to really put the effort in and stay in contact and create an exchange where you help one another and you're there for each other and you build trust in those relationships.
Yeah, thank you all for being here. It's Charlie, first year MBA. You guys all seem super fulfilled in your entrepreneurial endeavors. Super happy to be doing what you're doing, waking up every day. And I think it was John who mentioned, to differentiate yourself, you have to specialize. And each of you are specialized in a super different and disparate area within the real estate industry. I'm interested in your previous chapters, in your previous roles. Scott, you talked about this a little bit, but how you narrowed down to the specialization that you have landed on. And it's a little spin on Haley's question, but more so within the big world of real estate, how did you decide to do advisory services or certain kind of development? And for you, Misty, how did you decide to narrow in on the geography that you did? But those are very specialized activities. How did you get there?
Yeah, I'll tackle that one. So I think my advice to you would be, if you're interested in real estate, go talk to as many people as you can. Just go do informational interviews, and you can pull the student card, and it works really well, and you can meet with as many people as you want, and then go meet with them and say, hey, do you have 3 other people you want to recommend? And then before you know it, you have more people that you can meet with. And so you'll learn a lot in those conversations as to kind of what you want to do. Hey, I think that's really cool what he does. Go learn more about it. So I'd say that's one way that you can learn, and you may like something clicks and you're like, hey, I think that's really cool because I love multifamily for these 5 reasons, or I want to be in this market, Dallas, wherever. So I think, in doing that, you can learn a lot about who you are and what you want to do. And then I think, if you're an MBA student, you've already been working, I guess, you've already had a job at some point, but at some point you just got to jump in and learn the business. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a little bit more general in the beginning before you kind of pick your specialization. I think that's maybe a little further down the road, but yeah, I'd say meet with as many people as you can to learn what they do, and it may kind of come to light for you. Don't be afraid to be more of a generalist in the beginning. And I think, those are the 2 things that I would probably recommend.
Any other questions?
I'm going to jump in here just because I think you made a good point about the specifics, and you've got to love something about something that seems good to you, and then you need to study it. And I stumbled into housing because I bought a house the year I got out of Chapel Hill in Boston. Stupid me, 18% interest rates. And I'm like, oh, but I love this. This is really cool. I had a botany degree from Chapel Hill because I didn't want to be in the business program with everybody from Myers Park or Country Day.
Yep.
And then I said, oh my, this is so great. So I went to the design school and studied housing. Then I volunteered for communities and affordable housing groups, and I just loved it. So I think that it's just a very different track from where y'all are and how things, but I continue that learning today because I think you're right, you have to go out and see a lot of things to specialize, but starting off and just looking, it's kind of scary to me that you'd have to pick something today and, not explore it wholeheartedly. Is that helpful?
And I'll chime in a little bit. I know we don't have much time left, but I feel like that I grew up in Greensboro, went to Chapel Hill, spent some time away from Greensboro, and then moved back in the 90s. And as I said, I had an entrepreneurial business for 20 years, sold it, and my dad was aging, and so I was curious. He was in industrial real estate, but as I explored that, I kind of wanted to keep an arm's length with that. And I fell in love with lifestyle. Like what we can do to make our lives better. How can we live similar to you and your house story? But it's like how can we provide the gifts of how people can live and feel better? The health of having nature near you, the health of having your quiet space and and having an outdoor space and having your public space where you see your neighbors and have the ability to share. And I fell in love with traditional neighborhood design, the concept of inclusion and having different socioeconomics, different demographics all together, and how we learn from each other. It's funny because when we're growing up, we see the concept of what we know. And that's like if our mom does this or our dad does this or our grandparent does this, then we have that's our narrative. And that's sort of how we kind of create a lot, unless we have access to education at Kenan-Flagler and different places like that. But I feel like that if we can take our young people and we can have people living in closer proximity with one another to help people see different kinds of lifestyles and different things that people do, we can all help one another and live in the world in a much better way. So that's my passion. Hope that helps.
Okay. So each of you kind of spoke about how kind of your key to success has been figuring out your niche or your specialty and focusing on that. But then we also live in a world that's changing. We spoke a little bit about technology and disruption. So how do you balance staying true to kind of your core mission as an entrepreneur within the real estate sector, but also reacting to changing trends or customer needs or changes in technology advancement? How do you kind of balance that out?
It's hard. It's hard to do it all. There's so much stuff to study. I think, you have to choose what's your priority at the time, for what you're working on, what you need to do. But that's why I love it. I just say, I rely on my network. I go to as many ULI tours, and I always drive somewhere different, to see as much as I possibly can. But there's just so much change and an opportunity, with our population growth and with our health and living, it's hard. So you've got to lean on people in the industry to help you. I mean, I have a lot of people in the food industry, I have people in the farming industry, I have people in the transportation industry. I lean a lot on those people, and then ULI and my friends from that and around the world just figure out what's going on and how to leverage that and not feel like I'm behind. Does that help?
I think too, there's always going to be disruption and cycles in our business, and I think it's inevitable. And I lived through 08, 09, 10 in the business, and it was awful. It was some of the darkest years of my career. Jumped from property management, which had a very healthy salary component to it, into leasing. My first day in the leasing role, commission base was November 1st of 07, and showed up, and it was for 3 years crazy. But I think getting through that, obviously you learn a lot, but back to data and analytics and being trends and reading and understanding your market. I mean, the more you do that, when you come out of that, at our company, Tours Climb, we formed 3 business units in 2010. And that was really people coming around, sharing information, looking at trends, looking at competition, looking at the market, and trying to get ahead of, and believing in your core value, what we were doing as a company, but really seeing what the disruption was creating from an opportunity standpoint. We created a brokerage business we had never done before, multifamily development business. We'd always done office, industrial, retail, and then investment management acquisition. We had always developed, never acquired. And to this day, at Tours Climb, those are 3 extremely healthy arms that were formed coming out of one of the most major disruptions. So I think it was like core value with the people that were there, believing in it, trying to stay relevant from a data perspective, read, talk, be ahead of it, because we are going to always have those cycles, and just trying to get ahead of it, be prepared, be smart, and you have to take some risk as well.
And I believe wisdom meets technology. You know, it's like as you guys are graduating and looking at the world, meeting with some older people that have done it so manually, you'll learn so much from them. And then you can incorporate a lot of the technology pieces on the new side and really make that even better. So I just encourage to sort of look at all generations and be open to all different kinds of people. I mean, all of us are different here in this panel, and we've all have a relationship and an interweaving connection of what we do, but we all do different things. And I feel like it's incumbent on all of us to continue to educate ourselves, to continue to read and grow and learn as much as we can for the rest of our lives. So I feel like y'all are in a great place in this learning environment. As you step out, just remember that piece and always be true to what you want to learn and go seek it. Be curious.
All right,
One more plug just on that, back to reading, and sorry, I'm a book guy, but some of y'all might know Gary Chesson. I know Alex does, but he was at Childress Klein, and then formed a company called Trinity Partners, Trinity Capital, and he wrote a book recently called Creating Trinity. It's a fascinating, just open, transparent, goes through a lot of things from an entrepreneurial standpoint. That's really what the book's written about, is how to become a real estate entrepreneur and investor. And he completely opens it up, talks through a lot of these challenges we just talked about. And anyway, it's a very light, good read, but it just fits perfect for this topic. And check that out.
Good choice.
Yeah.
And he's an executive, and Gary Chesson is an executive in residence. So I know everyone's busy, but if you have time to read the book before you go talk to him, it'll probably be great too.
Yeah.
So
And he's more than happy back to talking to people. He would love to talk to every one of you. That's what he's doing right now. So take advantage of that.
So let's give all of our panelists. And so now we will have Alex.
Yes, we're gonna have a talk from Alex, so we do this now. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Misty.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to meet you all.
I would say I'm going to be at the Carolina Inn if anybody wants to have a drink later and talk more. Drinks on me.
So now we're going to have a talk from Alex. Alex is the owner of Brandwine's Bagels, and that's whose food we've been eating. So it's great to have him in person. He's going to talk to us about going from real estate to building his business, and then after that, we're going to close it out. And I know some of you want to speak to the panelists, so they're still here giving us their time, and we're very grateful. So yeah, feel free, you can stand, sit, whatever you feel most comfortable.
I also have some gift cards for you guys. Thank you. I'm gonna pass those around. Sure, I'll send you guys. Cool. It's a little surreal sitting here, to be honest with you guys, because I was a student just a few years ago in the MBA program. So, with any of these, let's make it useful, like a good use of your time. Interrupt me, cut me off, challenge me, like dig deep on anything. It's really your time. Like you guys chose to be part of this. You chose to spend time here tonight to be part of an MBA program. Like I know it's not a popular thing to say, but be selfish with it. Make sure it's working for you, and that if I can be helpful at all tonight, like please let me know. I'll tell you a little bit about my background. It sort of works out well because I was in real estate for about 8 years before I ended up in Bagel Land. So I can tell you a little bit about that too, and just the process and how I thought about it, entrepreneurship, etc. So yeah, let's get into it. So I'm from New York originally. I grew up eating bagels every single day. I had no idea what that meant in my life. I didn't even think about it. Bagels for me were just the thing that made everything a little bit better. Family, friends, school, life, just something about bagels just made it all better. And that was just the through line. I went to the University of Wisconsin-Madison for undergrad and ended up in Chicago because that's where you end up when you graduate from Wisconsin. And I found myself in the investment banking world without knowing a lot. My mom was the main provider in my family, worked in finance, teachers, GIA craft for about 40 years in real estate. and provided for myself and my two sisters. And I wanted to just keep paying it forward. And so I wasn't going professional in any sports. The finance world seemed like a good place to go. And for me, investment banking felt like a good place to establish myself, get some great experience. I never thought I was the smartest person, not even close, but I always thought I could control how hard I work and the effort I put into it. And I thought investment banking would be a great place for that. I worked at Bank of Montreal, based in their US headquarters is in Chicago. I was in their real estate investment banking group, and then was there for about a year or so. And at this moment in my life, I'm just like head down. I'm like, blinders on, follow the track, go do the thing. The grass will be green, just go. So I'm an investment banking analyst at BMO. I'm like, cool, mid-cap bank, gotta get to a large cap bank. And I go from BMO back to New York and get a job at JP Morgan in their real estate investment banking group. And everything's going well. I'm an analyst there, and then I move up to become an associate. And when you hit associate, it's now time to go from the sell side to the buy side. And I start interviewing at private equity firms and find myself at a firm called AllianceBernstein. AllianceBernstein is this big $500 billion gorilla, basically, asset manager. After 2008, they wanted to get into alternatives because they mostly did stocks and bonds before that. And they started a real estate private equity group. They brought over two guys from Goldman Sachs, from the Whitehall funds at the time, and started a real estate PE fund. It was a $2 billion, they peeled out of AllianceBernstein. They're now called Prospect Ridge, but it's a $2 billion real estate private equity fund, invests in anything looks, smells, acts like real estate, and opportunistic, and it was sort of the dream. Group of 20 people or so. I was on acquisitions and asset management, and everything again is looking like things are going well on the outside. On the inside, I'm pretty miserable. The environment is not me. The yelling, the screaming, the challenging. I mean, the guys I worked with, brilliant, absolutely brilliant negotiators, so thoughtful. I learned so much. But that world was not me. I was never that math person. I was never that hard, crushed negotiator. And so I realized I needed to step off. And that's what led me to be going to the MBA program and figuring out what that next move was for me. I knew I always had a seat back there if I wanted it. But I came to Chapel Hill thinking, what's that next move? I had the real estate experiences, but I was trying to figure out what was next. I had entrepreneurial real estate ideas too, and the group I was in, we got to start different hotel lines. We were looking into what to do with all these dead malls and had really fun ideas around that. And I was like, cool, maybe there's something there. But when I got to Chapel Hill, I, for the first time, just sort of paused and was curious about what I was actually interested in. So you asked about specifics and where you spend time, and I think you talked about being passionate about it. I think for me, after you finish your homework and your meetings and your clubs and all the things, what are you actually spending time on? What are you actually enjoying? Because there's probably a career there, a job there, something. And for me, I couldn't stop thinking about a bagel shop. I couldn't believe it. I was like, where is the bagel shop? Madison had one. It was called Gotham Bagels. One of my great mentors from AllianceBernstein went to UVA. If you know the area, it's called Bodo's Bagels. And that's a town that's even smaller than Chapel Hill. And they've got 3 Bodo's Bagels there. I couldn't believe it. So I'm like, where's the one for Chapel Hill? And that was the first idea. And everything blossomed from there. For me, it was a couple things. I had 3 questions for myself that I needed to answer. One, why doesn't it exist? I can hear my old bosses being like, hey, Alex, you're not that smart. And they're perfect economists, there's never gonna be a $20 bill on the ground. And bagels is not that, let's be honest, it's not that new of an idea. And so if it doesn't exist, or why, what's the story? And I started being curious about it because it's a great question, right? Where is the bagel shop? What's up with Bruegger's? What's up with Panera? And started to figure out that landscape. And does anybody else care about a New York style bagel, or is it just me? Does that from scratch boiled and baked experience mean something? So that was the first thing I needed to answer. The second question for me was, how do you actually do it? How do you actually run it, right? Like, I also needed to be real that like I've been in the cubicles all my life, and this idea, right, it sounds really great, get out of that, wear shorts and a t-shirt, and be at a bagel shop. Like, do I actually want it, or am I just sort of glorifying this experience? So I actually got a job at a bagel shop. That was my big summer internship during my MBA experience. I wasn't gonna go work at some big company. I actually got a job for $9 an hour at a bagel shop. I worked part-time there while developing my business plan. And I learned a ton about how they operate, how they run, how you staff it. Yeah, just so much. And the great part was it was a big bagel chain. And so all their bagels were frozen. So I didn't have any recipe issues or anything like that going on. I just got to be in the shop. And then the third question is, for entrepreneurship, I know it doesn't always come up a lot, but it's like, does this thing make money? It's like you have an idea, but will this thing actually provide for you? Will it provide for a life for myself and maybe a future family one day? And I needed to figure out the math of, for me, how many bagels do I need to sell? What does that look like? And I know in the real estate land, you know, getting a lease, what's the occupancy cost to that relative to the sales that I need to achieve? How is this all going to work? And I just started working on those things bit by bit. I was working on a recipe, which was hilarious because I cannot bake at all. I can barely be in a kitchen. I'm the person in my family when my mom asked me to put water on the stove for some pasta and I grabbed the tea kettle. Like that's like the starting line. But I started making recipes at home. I started bringing them to everyone in Kenan-Flagler to try them and taste them and everything. I started reaching out to all the local business owners and understanding the market. I called, like seriously emailed and called every bagel shop I could possibly think of. Big one, there's ones in like Cornell that have like famous bagel shops. There's one that I finally got connected to in Denver. It's called Rosenberg's Bagels. His name's Josh Pollack. He's a New Jersey guy. He moved to Denver and started, and they've got everything. They've got bagel shops. He's got a pizza shop. He's got a deli now. And somehow, some way, this guy spent 3 hours with me. I was out in Denver, sat down with him, and went through everything. And he's someone I still can call on today, and so on and so forth. So those connections, like you talked about connections, you talk about building relationship, you start doing the underwriting, literally. How many bagels do I need to sell? And then you start, you know, your minimum viable product. I did pop-ups. We literally just, I hand-rolled bagels. A bunch of amazing people in the program helped out on Saturday morning, showed up, and we just ran it. I think for me though, it never felt like this has to work. It never felt like, oh my gosh, all my chips are on it. It was always just, let's just try it out. Honestly, I felt like a 7-year-old just sort of playing in my backyard with a lot more skills, but it felt like something I just wanted to keep coming back to. And for me, if that pop-up didn't work, I'd be like, cool, that was fun. Let's throw it out the window and we'll try something new. And you'd have to be really honest about that. But it kept working. There kept being something here. We kept selling out. It was like a pop-up with like 1,000 bagels sold to 1,200 bagels sold, and on and on and on. I'm not a big believer in if you build it, they will come. I need to see the data. I need to see that there's something viable here. So we took the lease. The timing was perfect. We signed our lease on February 14, 2020. The world went upside down just a few weeks later. I had nightmares of like emailing with like HR at JP Morgan to like on my BlackBerry to like get my job back. And it was like, what am I doing, right? Like how did I become the worst student at Kenan-Flagler to open up a small business during this time? But it was the relationships with people in the community. It was other bagel shop owners that were telling me that hang in there. Bagels are actually really work well right now because they're grab and go, they're freezable, it's just carbs and feels good. And for us, we were actually developing like what our company's values were. And it's being there for the community. It's to make someone's day a little bit better, as cheesy as it sounds. And in a chance in a time when everyone was nervous, trying to find safety, trying to find something outside of their house, if we could be the bagel shop that had a 100 health score, that had really good transparency, that raised their hand when we make mistakes, and that felt good in that moment, maybe there's something there. And so we're off to a good start. We opened to our team's credit, we stayed open every single day throughout the pandemic. And we had an opportunity to go from a leased space to buying our space, and the building behind us came open. And now all the chips are in. We've got a loan, and we own our real estate, and we're growing. So a lot of a ramble there, but a lot of it was just keep following the things that felt good, be really honest about whether it's working or not working, and just keep taking it step by step. And so I never thought I'd be here, never thought I'd be telling the story to you all, but it's been really fun. It wouldn't happen without this community. Like, take advantage of the people in your class, the administrators, the staff, the teachers you don't know, but talk about what your ideas are, and someone's gonna latch on, someone's gonna level up, someone's gonna give you an introduction. Follow it, run with it. If it's something you're excited about, there's someone's gonna join you on that path and make it a lot more fun, a lot easier. So yeah, those are just a few thoughts from my experience.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing your journey. I'm sure some of you have questions, but to respect everyone's time, we're gonna keep all the questions for after the session closes, and then you can go meet Alex. So thank you again. Just a reminder that we still have about 4 or 5 sessions left, so please come attend. They've been so great so far, and we're very grateful that you all came today. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you everyone for coming.
Alex, hey, Demetrius. Nice to meet you.
Yeah.